Welcome to the latest ATP podcast. This week we are at the City Open in Washington. I'm Brian Clark, and over the course of the show we'll hear from the former American star James Blake. Nick Kyrgios will speak about why he's so focused on entertaining fans. We'll find out what Kei Nishikori does to relax away from the court. And the young Italian star Jannik Sinner tells us how he's able to keep so calm in pressure situations. But first, delighted to say that we've got a guest for this week's episode. It's a former player. He got up to 31 in the world. You've heard him commentating all over the world. He's with Tennis Channel here in the U.S. It's Leif Schirus. Hey, Leif. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, and glad to be a part of it. Great to see you again, Brian.
So this week in Washington, we've been working together on site, and returns were kind of the theme. This tournament didn't happen last year because of the pandemic. We've got a 2021 tournament. We've got a full complement of fans, and we've got Rafael Nadal on U.S. soil for the first time since he won the U.S. Open in 2019. Let's start with the fans. Just what kind of shot in the arm does it give these players when they're playing in front of packed houses?
It's the best thing the players could have ever asked for. I mean, all of us, I think, in general, are more comfortable playing in front of crowds. There's recognition of each little achievement, recognition of the drama that's unfolding before their eyes. And I think, again, as a player, you walk down that tunnel, and to step out on a court with, thousands of people there, even if it's a small crowd, there's energy there. And for a long time, players have had to dig that energy from deep inside. Instead, now they can get a little bit of it from the crowd. They have someone to play for other than just themselves. So I think it makes the tennis better. And we've seen that in the quality of play in Washington. I really feel there's been some fabulous tennis. And it just makes for better theater, better drama, and better sport. So normal never felt this good.
Energy is always going to be there when Rafael Nadal's on the court. So it was kind of going hand in hand. Everybody was excited to be back at this tournament, but once they announced that Rafael Nadal was coming here to a tournament where he had never played, that's not really something we see Nadal do much these days. The interest level here in D.C. just went absolutely through the roof. What'd you think of seeing Rafa again?
Rafa's great. He's, when I say one of the best, I mean that in every way. He's a great guy, great ambassador for the sport, great ambassador for Spain. What can you say? He brings to the court such special qualities. The match he played with Jack Sock, I felt it was one of the best matches I'd seen since Rafa played Novak at Roland Garros. It was that kind of drama, that kind of intensity. The crowd was plugged in, and that's where that synergy between crowd and players is so remarkable. And one thing why we love sport and why we've wrapped our life around it. It's something really special, what he does. And you can only begin to admire him more and more. When he first came on the tour, I thought he was a bit of a grinder, maybe a little unimaginative, great physical specimen, brilliant mind. But now he's an all-round player. He does everything on the court. He volleys, he drops shots, he comes in, he uses all parts of the court. So he's really fun to watch as a player. And we know, how well he concentrates. It's every point. And good news for Jack Sock. I thought Jack Sock played well in his return, too. So it was a win-win, I suppose, for everyone. Great to see Rafa back.
We'll talk more about Jack Sock in a moment, but Rafa's run ended a bit shorter than I think he would have liked when he was beaten by Lloyd Harris. It's been a nice year for the South African. Got to that final as a qualifier a few months ago in Dubai. He talked afterwards, though, about staying in the moment for the biggest win of his life.
Today was really special. I think I think I've had some big wins in this year. I beat some Grand Slam champions, but to beat a 20-time Grand Slam champion, and especially in front of a full crowd and with such an amazing atmosphere, it was definitely something very special. To be honest, tennis-wise, I did a lot of good things. I think the best thing was to stay in the moment, keep my composure, and just try and, I think I just stayed with my game and stayed playing the consistently good level throughout the match. For sure, from a tennis aspect, I did a lot of good things, and it was a good quality match, I think. Not easy for me out there. It was pretty physical, but all in all, I'm just super happy with how everything turned out.
So you're Lloyd Harris, and you come out, you beat Rafael Nadal. You're on the verge of beating Rafael Nadal. It sounds a lot easier said than done to say, okay, stay in the moment, Lloyd. How do you do that?
I think you have to, sort of percolate it down to the basics, trying to do what you do well. And for Harris, he was serving really well. He was serving big. He's a 6'4" athlete, and when he gets it going, he's tough to stop. I think he's got a tremendous upside. I think the fact that Xavier Malisse has been working with him, he had a lot of good ideas about what he wanted to do when he came out on the court. He was playing with power. He was trying to dictate where he could against Rafa, forcing Rafa to defend. And I think he just tried to do those same things when he came down the stretch. He had a couple of big first serves that helped him get through those final moments. So I was really happy for him because he's another good guy out there. And he's on his journey, and he seems like he's just taken off. I know his ranking will be at a career high. And with his size, his talents, seems like a very good young man. He's going to go places.
It was tough to be a top seed here. Rafa Nadal lost to Lloyd Harris. The second seed, Felix Auger-Aliassime, was beaten by Jenson Brooksby. This tournament, in many ways, feels like the big-time arrival of Jenson Brooksby. He just got to his first ATP final in Newport. He has been dominant at the challenger level this year. He's got 3 titles. This guy has become the revelation. We saw Andy Murray's tweet comparing him to Florian Mayer with some of his tactics. But it's a game that Francis Tiafoe called super unorthodox. What about the Brooksby game is so different?
You watch him play, and he seems like a good, strong baseliner. Yet then he plays some of these funky drop shots with the 2 hands. He comes in and has a 2-handed volley, a lot like the German Florian Mayer. Right on, Andy. You got that one right. And he seems to defends super well. So he has a little bit of Andy Murray in him. And when he says high IQ, I think Andy has one of those too. So he sees a like-minded spirit in this young man. Out of Sacramento, California, he's got a good family behind him, a really good coach in Joe Gilbert, who has an academy in Sacramento and has handled him for the last 15 years. So when I talk to JT, as he's known, Jenson Tyler Brooksby, get used to that name, JT, because we're going to hear it a lot over the next 10, 15 years. He's probably going to make a lot of money, too. I think he's going to do very, very well. But the fact that he can defend so well, absorb pressure, then suddenly turn the tables, and also surprise people. I think he keeps people off balance, puts them in awkward positions. He's got this funky underspin 2-handed backhand that stays low. I mean, I thought a little about Miloslav Mečír, the Czech player back in the 80s, a little different era, yes, but also how he was able to put other players off balance with his sort of quirky game style. But it's going to be fun to watch this young man's journey. He seems like a wonderful kid, and boy, he's got some talent. And he's still sort of in that embryonic phase, though, admittedly. I mean, his serve's going to need some work. His overhead is, by the ATP standards, probably poor, but he's going to grow as a player. And I think he'll need a little more polish in the front court, but boy, the sky's the limit for this guy.
Turns 21 in October. He is the lowest-ranked semifinalist here since John Isner 14 years ago in 2007 when Isner had just come out of the University of Georgia. Semifinal opponent for Brooksby, Jannik Sinner, and he's the guy that so much is expected, and he's delivered. Of course, he won the ATP Next Gen in Milan in 2019, his first ATP title the end of 2020, another one this year. And it's hard to imagine that he still is not 20 years old. He looks and sounds wise beyond his years.
Yeah, again, he has a good family, like young Jenson Brooksby, and I feel like Sinner has that same kind of thing. He's learned the respect for hard work from his mom and dad, and I think he has that same application. He's very calm in the head, which is a really nice quality to have, and you notice that when he talks to the press. He's comfortable in his own skin, and fairly articulate and smart. He seems to have, as you said, a little bit of wisdom for someone so young. So, I think the sky's the limit for this guy, too. He also possesses remarkable talents on court. So, he's got a really nice balance off court, on court, mental. I think he's got a growing physical presence, getting a hold of his sort of 6 foot 2 inch thin frame. I think he's going to get that right. That's part of the development of an athlete. But, he's already done great things, and he's going to turn 20? Jeez, these guys are getting old.
A little insight just about how much of a student of the game he is. That match Leif and I talked about, how Nadal played Jack Sock, and it was a thriller. Place was packed. Where Leif and I are doing some work here on site for the tournament, we're in an elevated position, and during that match, I see a guy sitting on the steps to our position, and I realize the guy sitting on the steps just taking in the match like a fan with a ticket is Jannik Sinner. I mean, that's where he is right now, 19 years old. He is soaking it all up like a sponge. That says a little bit more about him.
Yeah, and Riccardo Piatti, his coach, has said, he's in this long process of development, and part of it is, watching the best players, seeing what players do and learning from them. And he did the same thing in Atlanta. He was watching matches where he could. I know he watched Nick Kyrgios's tennis. So he's out there soaking it up.
Won the doubles, of course, in Atlanta with Riley Opelka, his first ATP doubles titles, playing doubles here with Sebastian Korda. And he also spoke with our reporter, Anne-Marie Batson, to kind of explain how he's dealing with all the attention he's getting as he climbs the rankings and goes deep into some of these bigger tournaments.
Well, it's in one way very nice, having fans behind you who are pushing you. At the end of the day, it's depending on myself, on what I want to do and what I want to reach, and it's all about pushing myself to the limit on every part of my game, mental, physically, and also tennis-wise. So I'm very focused about myself, and obviously it's nice to have some fans behind me.
Because you're so calm, Jannik. Where does that come from?
Yeah, I'm trying to stay calm. It's sometimes it goes on the nerves as well, but
is it conversations in your head?
There are some. Obviously, I think every player has them, and have some pressure moments on every match. But trying to don't show that to the other, to the opponent, and I think this comes from my parents. I would say they have very simple jobs. They have a lot of respect of their work they do, and a lot of respect to every people they talk to and see. So I would say this is thanks for them, and I'm very happy that I have this kind of mentality what they gave me.
Because you're a very good skier as well. Can I just say, I can ski, but I can do like easy reds, and that's how far I can take it, because then I get scared. So from your point of view, I mean, there's nothing scarier than hurtling down a mountain and pushing yourself to the edge. Do you think you transfer what you learned from skiing into your tennis game? I think
skiing and tennis are two different sports. Obviously, on our part, it's pretty normal to ski. Everyone knows how to ski, and at some point I was a little bit scared, to ride down the big slopes, and
it freaked me out the first time I did it. Honestly.
Yeah, it's not easy, and it is different, because at the end of the day you play tennis, nothing can happen. Obviously, you can twist your ankle, or but you don't risk your own life. In skiing, it's like if you really go down fast, everything can happen, and maybe if something goes wrong, you're going to risk. So this is makes me feel always quite comfortable on court. The only bad thing, obviously, I do whatever I can to don't do that, but it's losing, and I try every solution to win, and obviously somehow trying to win the game, and at the end of the day nothing can happen.
How much has your mentor Piatti, how much has he played a part in helping you develop your character, develop your playing style?
Well, obviously, I think Ricardo, everyone knows how good he is. He has a lot of experience now. He had Novak when on that age where I am right now, which helps me a lot. Sometimes he tells me stories about every player he had a little bit. So, it's good, and this kind of things makes me grow. For sure, and I'm very happy that I have the chance, and I'm very honored to work with him, and all the team together, which is we are obviously working together, but we are big friends, and it's kind of family, when we work together and travel together, so it's very nice. Yeah.
Do your family and Piatti and your friends allow you to think that you can reach the top of the game?
No, I think it takes time, every step, has his story, it takes time, it's not that you're going to reach the top in a few months or in a few years, it takes time, and honestly I don't think right now about that, as I said, I want to give 100% what I have, and then we will see what's happening. Obviously, there are goals you want to achieve. There are goals you want to, yeah, you want to do them, but it doesn't mean that you are going to do that. Obviously, you have to have a lot of self-belief. The team around you has to push you in the right way, and I have that. And obviously, I know where my goal is, where I want to go, but then we'll see what's happening.
Because you've had so much in your life already. I'm going to reel off a list for you. You played Nadal at Roland Garros. You lost to Hurkacz in the Miami final. You've played Novak Djokovic, Rublev, Tsitsipas. I mean, there's so much you've done already, and yet you're just so relaxed about it all. How do you measure yourself against those players?
You know, these are kind of matches where you are really looking forward to. You know, at the end of the day, you practice for these matches. You practice for to have a chance to win against them, and you know, to go to that point, you have to win against other players, you know, which is top 20 players, top 30 players, which are very, very tricky. And you know, at the end of the day, you know, when you win against 130 of top 40, it seems normal, but you know, it's not that easy. It's very, very tough to win every match on tour. And obviously, when you play against the top guys, you have to take every chance you have in every point, or in every set, or in every game. So I'm just trying to do that, seeing what really I can improve, because I think when you play against them, you really can see that, and then you go back on practice courts and trying to practice every single thing.
You're listening to the ATP Tennis Radio Podcast. Available on iTunes, Spotify, TuneIn and ATPTour.com.
Here with Leif Shiras on the ATP Radio Podcast. And Leif, we're talking all about these young guys who are coming out of nowhere. Somebody who has been through the battles before. The only player who was really left deep in this tournament who's been to a major final, won an Olympic medal, won this tournament, the City Open, that's Kei Nishikori. His draw was really helped by Lloyd Harris beating Rafa Nadal, but Kei's going pretty well right now.
Kei looks great, and you know, hearing him in the press, he was, you know, talking about how this is the best I've felt in a couple of years, you know, so and he's had some struggles where he hasn't gotten the results he's wanted, but now he's moving freely, and that's a big thing as a tennis player, to be able to run freely without feeling, you know, you're going to get injured or you're sore. And boy, his ground strokes look like, you know, vintage Kei. Can I say that? I mean, he's pretty young by ATP standards these days, in his early 30s, but he's got so much experience and so much confidence. And now that he's back healthy, back striking the ball like a dream, I mean, you know, he's always been one of the great ball strikers in our game. So look for him to be dangerous, because you watched him in his matches here. He's also volleying well. You know, his ability to come in at the right times. He's not afraid of the net. And I think there was a time maybe where he wasn't comfortable with that. And now I'd say, like many of these guys, as they develop over the course of many years, they're all court players now. They can do it all, and he's one of those guys.
Coming off a quarterfinal appearance at the Olympics on home soil in Tokyo, we know how much that event meant to him. Of course, the shame that it's the Olympics under different circumstances than what he would have envisioned. But we know how well that partnership has worked with Michael Chang. It's been fun this week to see Michael Chang's daughter here in the box courtside working on Team K. Also has Max Mirny on the team. He's a former gold medal winner, a great doubles player from a few years back. And Kei actually spent some time with the ATP Uncovered team answering some rather unconventional questions.
Flat in front of your face. Perfect. So these are fan questions from Twitter. So the first one is, what have you been doing during quarantine?
So I watch a lot of movies.
What was one of your favorites?
I've been watching many documentaries now. I watch a little bit like creepy ones, but...
Have you had any training changes recently that have helped improve your game?
I started working with Max recently.
He doesn't speak much, but he does a lot.
But he tells me good things, you know, to how I should come in a little more and playing aggressive, and of course also serve too. He's very disciplined from the serve, you know, he's very good coming in.
That's nice. Foot down, body weight forward.
I'm not trying to come in every time, but it's been taking some time, but I think I'm getting used to it now, so I'm feeling good now.
Who was your inspiration when you wanted to become a tennis player?
Roger.
Out of nowhere, Federer turns it up to 11.
Why, Roger? Anything specific or?
Just fun to watch. Of course, he's a great player, but also same time very fun to watch. There's not too many players I get excited to watch, but he's one of the best. You know, he makes great shots that nobody can do, and just fun to watch.
What's your favorite match over the year?
I really remember that I played David Ferrer first time. I think it was 2008 US Open. I was really young, 18, and I think he was top 10 that time, and I beat him for 5 sets. It was one of the emotional match for me, because especially I was young.
What is your best advice to a young player who wants to become a tennis player?
Well, maybe I think every job is the same, but you have to have, good commitment. You have to know that it's not going to be easy, and you got to work hard. So, tennis, it's really fun to play, and you get a lot of excitement on the court. And if you become good, you can play with, 10,000 people or maybe more. There's many fun things that are waiting.
Thanks for your time. Thank you.
I'd leave Kei Nishikori, one of the biggest stars in world sport, let alone the ATP in tennis. Two guys who've been a little bit more under the radar for different reasons. Mackenzie McDonald, he was a college star here in the U.S., had that really devastating hamstring injury at the French Open in 2019. So he was off the tour for a while. He's back, healthy, going well. He's got that different kind of counter-punching game. And then Jack Sock, who we talked about earlier, we know his accomplishments. Such a great doubles player. He's won multiple Grand Slams with partners, won the Rolex Paris Masters, got to the ATP Finals, but then injuries and that long slide from the top 10. Two very different routes back to the top, but it just goes to show you the difficulty of getting back to where you were before those injuries.
Yeah, and it's again magnifies how different everyone's journey is as a professional athlete, as a professional tennis player. I mean, I'm so happy for Mackie McDonald, great guy, a lovely guy, coming out of college, turned pro after, winning the NCAA 2As at UCLA. And he's one of the cleanest ball strikers you can find out there. And I think he's added a few miles per hour to his forehand. So he's got some growing weaponry from the back. He's a wonderful athlete, moves super well. And he's also trying to become more of an all-court player. And I think that's important, even if it only means, 2 or 3 touches at the net at the right times. I mean, that's what it can come down to with how close all these guys are. So it's great to see him doing so well. He deserves it, hardworking guy. And I think genuinely he's got a future.
And the cool thing with Jack Sock, because these are two different journeys, so Mackie McDonald was just starting to scratch the surface when the injury really came. He was playing his best ball and had that devastating injury playing doubles at the French Open. Jack Sock had been, not to the tippy top, but hey, top 10 player, ATP Finals, that is the top. And to have that fall that was precipitated by the thumb injury and everything that came with it, but to put in the hard yards and the hard work. He just won a challenger in Little Rock. He's got a coach, Alex Bogomolov Jr., who played that grinding style to some success a decade and a half ago. It's cool to see Jack embracing what it's taking to get back towards where he thinks he belongs.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. I mean, one of the keys throughout our conversation is that coaching matters here. You can see all these guys we're talking about have significant teams around them making good decisions and helping them along the way. Same with Jack Sock. Bogomolov's a nice mix. Sock looked great. He looked healthy. I think he's really happy off court, and that is so important for tennis players. Newly married, living in Charlotte. I mean, these are important things to make your life balanced and meaningful. It's interesting. I was looking at American tennis, and I look at Isner, Querrey, Johnson, and Sock. It's kind of the veteran guys. Great to see Sock coming back. Then you've got Fritz, Opelka, Tiafoe, Tommy Paul, and Mackie McDonald. I mean, that's another group of guys. And now you got Nakashima, Korda, and Brooksby. I mean, we've got some interesting layers of American tennis. I think Sock's going to make some big contributions there. We've seen Mackie do that already. But some of the young guys are going to be pressing some of the guys established like Sock. And that competitive friction can really mean a lot for players getting better and doing big things in the game.
Washington back here after a year off. The defending champion this year was Nick Kyrgios. That was his last ATP title. He's back, and of course that provided an opportunity to relive just how thrilling his run to the title 2 years ago was.
2 championship points for Kyrgios. Gets his racket to sway backwards and forwards. Serves out wide, clean ace, and then he falls to the floor. Nick Kyrgios is the winner of the City Open in Washington. He then leaps up, roars to the corner of the crowd, shakes his opponent's hand, is gracious, as is Daniel Medvedev in defeat, and Nick Kyrgios is the champion. What an extraordinary week it has been for the Australian.
I want to give people an experience rather than just a tennis match.
He is playing with an extra swagger tonight.
You know, I definitely feel at home playing throughout the States, you know, whether it's Atlanta, Washington, any of that. But that week was, for me, such a good journey. The fans absolutely love tennis in the States. I feel like they want to get involved. But man, that was one of my favourite weeks, you know, of my life.
It's been a really positive start this from Kyrgios.
Fans for me are the reason why I play. I love to entertain. I feel like it's all a show.
Look, it's Nick Kyrgios bringing in the shoes.
We've seen it all.
Not just me going out there, hitting good forehands, hitting good backhands. It's about making everyone in that crowd feel as if they're in the match as well.
And there we go. Well, he asked someone in the crowd, where should I serve this one? And clearly, that was the right answer.
I feel like I'm in the moment type of guy. I feel like that's how you get the crowd involved. Like, they're maybe not ever going to be able to play that level one day, but they're watching it, and to make them feel involved, you ask them, all right, where do you think you want me to serve? Like, where would you serve if you're in this moment?
And I think he's going to try the trick that worked for him in the quarterfinal yesterday. Gets a high five. It worked again.
What a match. There's nothing to explain.
We ride the roller coaster.
It's kind of like the finale, you know, like, all right, who's the lucky fan to tell me where to serve on match point?
And is he going to ask someone in the crowd where he should serve? We've seen it the last couple of matches.
And I feel if it works, it's the memory they're going to keep for life. You know, I think if you look on YouTube and you watch the match points against Tsitsipas and against Medvedev, like, just walk to a random fan telling me where to serve against one of the best players in the world and it works, that's pretty cool.
He's got the orders. There we go. Nick Kyrgios is the leading man in Washington, D.C. The Australian has been putting on a show all week here in the capital. And he is leaving with the silverware.
Go to watch an NBA game, or you go to watch any sport, you are hoping that you do to interact with one of the players. You want LeBron to throw you the ball or something like that. So if you remember Kyrgios coming to you and asking you where to serve on match point, or hitting a ball to, or talking to you, you remember those things for life. And I think that's what I want to give people, an experience rather than just a tennis match.
Nick Kyrgios, though, beaten in his first round by Mackie McDonald, who we were just talking about, played doubles here with Frances Tiafoe. We hadn't seen Nick for a while. With the pandemic, he was in Australia, came out at Wimbledon and gave the full Nick Kyrgios experience. Beat a player who was going really well in Ugo Humbert before he unfortunately had to retire against Felix Auger-Aliassime. Played mixed doubles with Venus Williams, because these are things he enjoys doing and wants to do. He gets criticized at times for maybe not taking the actual results, the actual tennis seriously enough. But here's a question. Is he right just to be like, I'm playing a game, I'm in the entertainment business, I'm entertaining people, I'm having fun? Is that the right way to approach it?
Yeah, I think these are all good questions. You know, tennis is entertainment, sport is entertainment. The problem with tennis is, you know, there has to be a certain level of achievement for you to hang around in the sport. It is a meritocracy, so you've got to be out there getting wins and, you know, earning ranking points, maintaining your ranking. So it's tough out there, and you'd hate to think that he was shortchanging himself or the sport by not giving it his best all the time. Having said that, we've talked about coaching, how important that is. You know, I feel like he could use a little bit of a good influence. You know what? Yeah, Tony Roach, or could you imagine what it might be like with Darren Cahill beside him, or someone like that who had sort of that motivation, the dedication to, you know, spur his player on to more? Or would he bristle against that kind of influence? So these are all questions that I think he should look at and say, okay, how can I improve myself? How am I getting better today? And if it's not as a tennis player, it's as a person. And if he's getting better as a person, perhaps he might improve as a tennis player too. So, I think these are some of the challenges emotionally that players face, and Nick has his own journey.
Each player's got their own. That's one of the many things that makes this sport so unique. And the journey for many of these players now heads north of the border, our border here in the U.S. to Toronto. It's the National Bank Open presented by Rogers. It's back-to-back Masters 1000 events. Leaf, you used to live in Toronto, right?
Yeah, I still have a place up there. My wife is from Toronto, so I'm an honorary Canadian.
So what does it mean just to have this tournament back after a year off?
Yeah, but no, they've got
several years because of the alternating format. It's been several years since the ATP was in Toronto.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's got a very vibrant tennis scene there. Lots of tennis clubs, very competitive players and community. And so when they have this week of tennis, it's big time. They really embrace it. So I think it's going to be great for the community. And they've been, trapped in a lockdown that's just opening now. A lot of protocols for the players. It's been difficult for them to get the people they want, their friends and family and coaches in because of some of these limitations on them. So it hasn't been an easy week. We've had a few pullouts, unfortunately, but I think it's still going to be a fabulous week of tennis. It's a great event. Let's hope that they can, sort of receive it in the way they want to and that they're allowed to by government restrictions.
I'm interested to see a couple of the big names now heading over here for the first time. Daniil Medvedev back on U.S. hard courts, where 2019 that launched him into the stratosphere, what he did when he got to the final in Montreal, won Cincinnati U.S. Open final. Stefanos Tsitsipas had that epic run at the French Open. We know what happened in the final. Tough at Wimbledon, nice run at the Olympics. But where is this now in the season? Is this kind of a reset point for some of these top players?
I think it is. I think, we've gone through the clay court season, which is a long one, 7-8 weeks of clay. The grass season's short, but it's intense, and there's a lot of pressure to perform on a surface not everyone's familiar with. Now you can get onto the hard courts, and you've got a bit of a stretch run as we get to the U.S. Open. So, yes, this is a huge reset for a lot of the guys. Someone like Denis Shapovalov, I feel like he's one of the guys who could make a deep run. I know his buddy Felix Auger-Aliassime is maybe struggling a little bit right now, but he'll be on home soil. I think the Canadians are going to make some moves. Sad to hear that Milos Raonic won't be aboard, but I still think it's going to be a great field, and watch out for the Canadians.
It'll be really cool to see the reception Denis Shapovalov gets after that run to the semifinals at Wimbledon. A player who has just such an explosive game, playing in his backyard. He has the flair, and this seems like the moment that Denis gets up for.
Yeah, and this is where, sort of Denis Shapovalov was born, when he beat Rafa Nadal in Montreal. I remember Wayne Gretzky, wife Janet, sitting in the front row, Canadian royalty looking on as the next Canadian royal was knighted. I mean, it was a really special moment, and being a part of that, you never forget that energy in the crowd. And let's hope that we can have those similar moments with a good, healthy crowd and performances like that. I'm not sure Wayne Gretzky will be in attendance, but I know Wayne is a big fan of Denis, and he's a great fan of tennis and Denis in general. So looking forward to that week.
Yeah, the event, it was canceled last year because of the pandemic, and it wasn't a certainty it would go forward this year, but here we go. And in our build-up, Chris Bowers chatting with a man who knows full well about the trials and tribulations of putting on a world-class event amid a pandemic. It's former player James Blake. He's the tournament director of the Miami Open, and he was able to look back with a healthy degree of pride on how the first Masters 1000 tournament of the year went back in the spring.
Yeah, it was very strange, but I look at it as a success because we weren't really sure if we were going to be able to have it at all. So to have it at all was the first step of it being a success. And then moving from there, I felt like we had a great event. There were so few hurdles that we hadn't accounted for. We figured there was going to be something that we wouldn't account for because it was so new with all the testing going on, the COVID protocols, the bubble for the players, not building the center court. So there was a lot going on that was very different, and only about 20% of the fans allowed in. But those 20% seemed like they had a great time. I got a lot of positive reviews from fans. I got a lot of positive reviews from the players. I'm not sure they're going to want us to put the center court back next year because they got to have that whole field for themselves with no interruptions and get to use it to play a lot of games of soccer. So I think the players really enjoyed it, and they were in a situation where they feel like they were in a lot of bubbles and they had to be in a bubble, but they felt like that one was at least a fair one, a pretty good one, and we did everything we could to make it as enjoyable as possible.
Do you think that when we look back on this period, assuming we get back to a form of normality in 2 or 3 years' time, that there will be an asterisk alongside the tournaments this year, or do you think that people will just say, no, every year is a bit different and this one was totally legitimate.
Yeah, if there's an asterisk, I would actually say it's a credit to those that did accomplish what they've accomplished in the last year or so, because it's so hard mentally, in my opinion, to get as excited when there's no fans or so few fans, because you really need to bring all that emotion, all that incentive from within, and you don't have the artificial adrenaline rush or the artificial incentive of fans and the instant gratification of them letting you know how great that shot you just hit or how much they're supporting you, get you turned around when you're not playing so well. So I think it's really impressive what players have done in the bubble life in the situation. But I think it's I think every year is different, but this one is pretty extreme.
As a tournament director in North America, you are competing in a very, very crowded sporting marketplace with lots of other sports that have a bigger place in the American heart than tennis. To what extent is it important for you and tournament directors in Cincy and elsewhere to have this young generation of American men do well?
Well, I think just we need to support the sport in general, because like you said, there is competition. We're usually going in March against one of the bigger events in the American calendar, March Madness, for the college basketball season, the end of the college basketball season. So the competition is there. The competition isn't against these other tennis tournaments. So we need to make sure that we're doing what's best for the entire sport. Young stars that are doing well in Cincinnati or Indian Wells or any event throughout the year, we need to build them up. We need to have whole new generations of stars. We can still honor and put in their rightful place the established stars of Novak and Roger and Rafa and Andy Murray, but for the longevity of the sport, hopefully some new stars start emerging and they become household names. And I think the household names, to some degree, is what helps get new fans in, get younger players that are watching and excited about the game. So we do our best to really promote all the players, but I think for the Miami Open, one of the biggest things we always try to do, and we were one of the first, is preaching the equality among genders and make sure that we're promoting the women as much as we're promoting the men, sometimes even more so, depending on who's playing well that year, who's selling tickets, and who's on the court at that time. So we always want to make sure that we're promoting the sport in general and both sexes.
You talk about the need for new stars to emerge. I mean, your playing career followed that wonderful generation of Agassi, Sampras, Courier, Chang, Martin.
Yep.
To what extent is it different? Is it difficult to try and establish yourself as a star when you're following a good generation? Because today's young Americans are following your generation, you, Roddick, Fish,
and I think that it's a dangerous game for a lot of the media to compare, because they were so hard, I feel like, on Andy and myself and Marty to say, when are you going to all be the next Sampras, the next Agassi, and then for this generation, well, when are you going to be the next Roddick? And they almost took for granted that we had two guys in the top 10 for a good chunk of our careers, and myself and Andy Roddick, and Andy right near the top of the game or at the top of the game for so long. So to have now no Americans inside the top 30 for a little spell here, that's it's not fun to see as an American male. You want to see a lot of success, but it'll go in cycles, and there'll be times when they're having a lot of success, but there's plenty of competition among other sports. A lot of young players in the States going to other sports, going to basketball, going to football, going to baseball, or even hockey. So I think having someone break through, which the next step might be in America, might be Sebastian Korda. That will be big to getting more and more fans involved. If he can go deep in a slam, I think that'll really help the sport in general.
And as a tournament director, you obviously want the best people, and Federer, Nadal, Djokovic has been the meal ticket for the last few years. Who's going to be the meal ticket in 3-4 years' time?
Oh, that's a good question. I think Tsitsipas for one, Medvedev, and I mean, being an American, I'm going to go with Korda as well. I think they'll have plenty of opportunities. Team will still be there, but you never know. 3 or 4 years, it might still be Rafa and Novak. It'd be tough to see Roger in 4 years playing at 43, but we'll see. And on the women's side, I mean, Coco Gauff right now is already starting to emerge as an absolute international superstar. I mean, I don't see Ash Barty slowing down anytime soon, and I really hope and wish Naomi Osaka to be healthy and back on the court, because she's absolutely a superstar as well.
And finally, I know being a tournament director is not quite as exciting as being a player out there, but does it run it a close second?
Yeah, I mean, I always know I'm extremely lucky. For one, to be lucky enough to go to work in a T-shirt and shorts and play a game for a living for 14 years, absolutely incredible. Count my blessings every day that I was able to get as much as I did out of my body. But then to take some time off and away from the sport and then realize how much you love the sport and want to be a part of it, how can I do that without being a player anymore? Absolutely, it's second. It's about second place to be able to be a tournament director and then a commentator and be around the sport that I love and has given me so much. I'm happy to still be around it and fortunate that I've gotten these opportunities.
You're listening to the ATP Tennis Radio Podcast. Available on iTunes, Spotify, TuneIn, and ATPTour.com.
Wrapping up here on the ATP Tennis Radio Podcast with Leif Shiras. Leif, we talked about the different challenges this year, this world presents. Is it harder just to win a tournament based on what these players are going through, whether it's different restrictions in different places, travel's a little bit more complicated? Does that make actually winning matches in tournaments harder?
Very good question. I think it probably does. Maybe in some small way it keeps the players a little more focused. Maybe they have fewer distractions that life can bring you. These guys are such talented young men, and for the women too on the tour. You feel like they're going in the right direction. Things are starting to open up. So the possibilities are limitless. I think, are we seeing the gradual loosening at the top of the game, which is opening more possibilities for young players? I think so. If it's not going to happen down the stretch this year, maybe next year in 2022. So all of these things are adding up to a pretty compelling finish to the tennis season with opportunities for these young guys. Can Novak and Rafa, can these established players hang on as long as they hope to hang on? So it seems like it's a really good time for men's tennis. And I hope we can put a lot of these pandemic days behind us. I think we're all going in the right direction. I hope we are. And we can do this all together. But, I think it's going to be fun.
This North American hardcourt summer really heating up. So that'll be it from here in Washington. Big thanks to Leif Shiras, and you can join us next weekend for another podcast where, of course, we'll be taking a look at the National Bank Open presented by Rogers. And in the meantime, you can listen to live coverage of that tournament, that Masters 1000 event. You check out the 24/7 ATP Tennis Radio live channel on TuneIn or the ATP website, and you've got ball-by-ball commentary of the National Bank Open presented by Rogers. Thanks for listening, everybody.